name is Bishop Bryant, and I'm coming to you today because I am grieved in my spirit, in my soul, and there are a few things in my heart that I like to disclose. As we know, our nation, as well as the world, have experienced this pandemic called the coronavirus, and it has taken out many of our loved ones, friends, family. But in addition to that, we have been witnesses of this police brutality throughout our nation. This police brutality is a result of systematic racism. I say that because we see so many of our black men and people of color who have been treated inhumane and many times have been slaughtered, murdered without cause. Oftentimes these people are unarmed, but yet they are being attacked. Why is that? When I reflect on the events within these past couple of weeks, I'm grieved. And I say it's time for action. Furthermore, when we talk about systematic racism and social injustice, America is supposed to be the land of the free. Well, when that phrase was coined, I'm sure it did not include people that look like you and myself. However, thank God for some change. It's not His desire, talking about God's desire, that any man be in bondage, enslaved, or held captive, but it's His desire that we be free and free indeed. But because we live in the land of the living, there are some things that just need to be changed. Therefore, it's time for action. But one of the reasons why we see such extreme prejudice and racism is because of imagery, because of symbols, because of false idols, even within our community. When we look at downtown Clinton, we see the courthouse right there in the middle of town. Right before you arrive to the steps of the courthouse, you are embraced with this Confederate monument that stands before you with an inscription. Someone said, well, what is the inscription? The inscription says, in honor of the Confederate soldiers of Sampson County who bore the flag of a nation's trust and fell in a cause, though lost, still just, and died for me and you. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that Confederate soldier that bore a Confederate flag won't fighting for me and you, but simply fighting a war so they can keep people of color in bondage. They wanted to keep slaves. They did not look at you and I as citizens, but rather they looked at us as mere property. This is so troublesome that even in 2020, living in a community that claimed itself to be an all-American city, only to find that racism is still within our midst. It should not have taken the death of George Floyd and many others who have lost their lives because of social injustice for us to recognize it is time for action.
Don't put that up there. Don't disrespect my monument.
Excuse me, sir. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
No matter what we sound like.
It's just a poster. We just want to take a picture.
We're just taking a picture.
Well, we can take
Go
a
take
picture.
it down
We
there
have
one of
a
the
right.
veteran
We have a
monuments.
right to take a
Go take it
picture.
one of the other veterans monuments.
Sir, with all due respect.
Oh yeah, I'm getting.
You don't
all
have
of
any
it.
respect. If you had any respect, you wouldn't be up here.
It is time for a change in our community. And there are officials who can make things happen, but rather it appears that we want to pass the buck. The NAACP about 3 years ago decided to make an appeal here in our community, and it was in the Sampson Independent, a local newspaper, making a request for the statue to be removed. But there's something interesting when it comes to politics and meetings that are held by elected officials. Something can be brought before the officials, and they can make one of three decisions. Either they can go ahead and act on it at that moment, or they can continue it, so they pick it up at the next meeting, or there's something that they do that's called tabling a particular subject. When something is tabled, often it is never picked back up. What I want you to understand is that the American people, the citizens of Clinton and Sampson County, the law-abiding residents within our community, said enough is enough. They want action. We cannot table this issue anymore. But it is time that this statue be removed entirely. The statue, the base that it's mounted on, be moved.
In 1999, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. And when I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, I raised my right hand and I swore an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And so as we sit here debating statues, we all need to keep in mind that these statues represent the domestic enemies that I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution from. Now we can paint them in any light we want and say that we should make up our minds about what they meant, but in reality, they were traitorous insurrectionists who sought to subjugate an entire race of people because of the color of their skin. And they felt so strongly that they should be allowed to own another human being that they were willing to throw the Constitution of the United States out of the window and join a movement to literally kill their fellow United States citizens to preserve that right. Now, we don't keep statues to those who have made an enemy of the United States. While the Confederates may have been given a pardon, while the Confederates may have been told that their actions would not be held against them, no one made a promise to any Confederate that we would celebrate them in 2017. Council members, as you consider what to do with these statues, I want you to carefully consider where the proper place for things that celebrate those who rose up against the United States government so that they could maintain the power to own their fellow man.
Now, I've done some research on this. As I stated, I've been looking into this for several months now. And what happened is that as a local municipality, we can say that, well, this statue or this monument, although it's in the midst of town, it's not our property because the property belongs to the county. But then I would say of my peers on the council, then let's go ahead and sign a resolution that we unanimously agree that this statue of this Confederate soldier be removed from our city. Let's put that in writing. In addition to putting that in writing, we put pressure on our county. And I know what the county would try to say. Well, because of the former governor, Pat McCrory, there is a law that states that this monument cannot be moved. But I beg to differ. To be more correct, the law states that if the monument belongs to the state, it cannot be moved. But let's look in more detail in what the law says. The law tells me that ownership matters. If the object is owned by the state of North Carolina, then more restrictions may apply. In addition to the limitations described above, an object owned by the state cannot be removed, relocated, or altered without approval from the North Carolina Historical Commission. The provision of General Statutes 100-2.1 specifically applies to a monument, a memorial, or work of art owned by the state. If a monument is owned by a city, county, or other political subdivision of the state with corporate powers to own property, or if a monument is privately owned and placed on public property, then there is no requirement to seek approval for the North Carolina Historical Commission. So, in other words, being that it's on county property, if the county has ownership of this, we do not need to go before the Historical State Commission. We just need our commissioners to come together and say, let's make this happen. Furthermore, if it's privately owned, the law says in General Statutes 102.1, it says that the limits on removal and relocation do not apply to an object of remembrance owned by a private party that is located on public property. And that is the subject of a legal agreement between the private party and the state or a political subdivision of the state, governing the removal or relocation of the object. So, for example, imagine that the Daughters of the Confederacy or another organization provided a monument placed on the courthouse grounds. If the private organization still owns the monument and a private agreement governs removal and relocation, then that monument is not subject to the statutory limits on removal. In that case, removal would be governed by the government between the organization and the local government on whose property the statue is located. That's the law. So there's no reason to pass the buck when we can make a decision and do something about this. Now, if we continue to procrastinate based on the information that we have here, then there are consequences. It means there'll be more protests. Protests in front of the courthouse. There'll be protests at municipal meetings and protests at county meetings until our voice is heard. If the voice is still not heard, then it would be time to take it so there's national attention. Now, we've already seen removal of such a statue in Pittsboro, North Carolina. And according to research, it said that there was a local judge who denied a motion from the group's chapter which sought a preliminary injunction stopping the county from removing the statue. And this is according to the chapelborough.com. The monument was a gift to the county and pointed to a 2015 law that would limit the county's ability to move objects of remembrance. However, the county determined that the statue belonged to the group and that it would end the previously granted license. So therefore, the statue didn't belong to the county, nor to the city, nor to the state, but the statue belonged to the Daughters of the Confederacy. So what happened, it said that the Pittsboro statue was removed at night with the county citing public safety and the effects on the traveling public. And similar to other Confederate statues, it was subject to a long legal battle and uncertainty over its ultimate fate. In August of 2018, the Chatham County Board of Commissioners voted to terminate a 1907 order allowing the chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy a license to put the statue in front of the courthouse. According to a news release from the county, the board also asked the group to provide a plan for the monument's removal by October 1st and said that if it did not meet the deadline, the monument would be declared a public trespass, therefore being removed. So where there's a will, there's a way. And we are saying that it's time for action. We're not simply asking you to move it, but we are making a demand. Those who are in elected seats, if they do not move expeditiously in the removal of said objects, then they will no longer hold those seats. We are already in the motion in setting up voting registration campaigns so that many of our young men and women, those who have never registered to vote before, those who are older and may not have transportation, we're going to make sure that you are both registered. Whenever we have protests, whenever we have social gatherings, we're going to make sure there's someone there so you can get signed up and register to vote. When you come into minority businesses, we're going to have forms so you can get registered to vote. And on the day of said elections, we're going to ensure that you got transportation to get to the voting booth so that your ballot can be submitted and that your voice can be heard. I also petition our local churches that you also utilize your vans, your buses, so that your parishioners can also get out and vote. Our voices will be heard because it's time for action. And in conclusion, these are not clouds that have no water, but these words will come to pass. We are a community that realizes we have strength when we stand together. If one can put 1,000 to flight, then two can put 10,000 to flight. We will progressively go forth to ensure that our voices are heard and that change is brought to our community. And once change is brought to our community, then change can further be brought to our state, and then from our state unto our nation, and from our nation unto the world. God bless you and take care.